capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I
It's
know.
really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. Tonight we're going to be continuing on with Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. But before we get to that, do a little housekeeping up front. We just finished the voting for the third annual Lefties Awards, and I have the results, but not gonna reveal them until award show night, which has been set as well for the end of this month. It's going to be Saturday, February 25th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Streamed live only on Twitch, right here at bread_theory. So that's twitch.tv/bread_theory. I'll be putting out a event on Facebook. So if you follow my page there, you can be sure to get that one. And keep it in mind. Should be a fun time. Much more fun than the topic we have tonight, which is still in the chapter on U.S. slavery. One of the worst systems of slavery, if not the worst, that has ever taken place on this earth, with one group of people enslaving another. But yeah, looking forward to the Lefties. Should be a good time. We have like 30 categories this time. Had a lot of responses. So last year, we had about half as many respondents as we did this year. So we've doubled our numbers from last year. So, thanks to everyone who helped get the word out. Thank you so much to everyone who voted. It's very much appreciated. And we got some interesting results that I can't wait to share with you. But I have to put together the entire awards reel, and I have to either make the placards that go behind everything. Like last year we had a really great group member of Left Signal Boost TV, who also does a Instagram art page where she makes stickers and stuff like that. And she had changed her name, so let me look for it right now. Let's see. So now she goes by Mulberry Jaan. So that's Mulberry Jaan. On Instagram, you can look her up. She did the graphics for us last year, and I'm hoping that she'll be able to do it again, but I have not asked yet. But if anyone's interested in helping with any of the work to put the award show together, let me know. Wherever you're finding this, just leave a comment. I'll get back to you, or send me a message, depending on where you might be finding this. And we'll put it together. It'll be a fun time. But I need people to do graphic design for the award show, so stuff to go behind, like be the backdrop for everything. I can quickly pull up what we did last year. Let's see. So just so you can get a better idea of what it is I'm looking for. Where are the Lefties here? I have so many playlists now that it's hard to find them. We'll pull it up though. We'll share the screen. So here's what last year looked like, just to give you a little taste of it. So this whole graphic here in the middle, that was designed by MothEr J, and I would love to have something similar for this year because this was just fantastic. Because as I'll forward it now, they're going to get a little clip of their work, and it basically is going to. So this is me and Amanda hosting it. There you have it. So yeah, so this kind of went behind all of the placards that. Interesting that YouTube is reposting that, but that's fine. We'll continue on and we'll see who won. That's funny. So yeah, so it's a little backdrop for everything. So like, you know, I'll take you through an entire. Let's see if we can look at an entire award. I'll make sure I'm sharing that right. Yes, I am. So yeah. And then of course, Marxists.org is a wonderful internet archive, and they have all sorts of resources about back in my glasses days, all sorts of stuff, pretty much anything. All right, pick it up there, dude. They do that same sort of stuff, but they did work. Okay, check out, and now we will see who won. So I'd announce the different nominees, and then I have a little thing. So congrats. So I'm looking for this sort of thing as well. So you can see this is the one of the graphics that comes up for Marxist Internet Archive. Basically, you slap someone, you slap a hand accepting a trophy on there, and that's one of the things they get as as a winner. That and clout. That's really all I have to offer. I wish I had more. But also, you know, it keeps people a little more honest. They're not just doing it for the money, I feel. But yeah, you can see backdrop once again. And so I need something like that. I need to do these really cool award placards. Cool to see it happen in real time as well. So that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. So it's gonna be something like this. So here was Best Illustrator. This is the reel that I'm gonna be putting together. Something like this with each of the nominees, because that's the big part of the award show, is to just showcase the work of everyone that got nominated, regardless of how they did, regardless of if they won or not. Here's our very own White Opium Art. That was the former name of MothEr J, but now they're going by that business name. Yeah, so there you have it. So that's basically how the awards are going to go. And I just need someone to help out with that. Also, yeah, we had a few guests drop by. There's Rob For We Are Many. Riverboat Jack was not on the program, unfortunately, but they were nominated. I think we were going through. Yeah, I guess it is.
Who is it?
You'll see. It's Dave Rubin. Yep. So there's something we can expect for next year, or for this year. Looking back at last year, in fact. Anyway. Need people to help with that. Need people to co-host with me if they are up for that sort of thing. Thank you, Allie Osher, cheering with the 100 bits. Let me shout you out there, friend. Everyone go check out Allie Osher. They run a very cool channel. Go check him out on Twitch there. Thank you so much. I finally get this back. Cool. Yeah, it'll be a fun time. So looking forward to that. Again, that is going to be Saturday, February 25th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Official announcement to come pretty soon. As soon as I can put it together, really. We will get into that, and it'll be a fun time. You'll get to learn about all sorts of leftist stuff, and we try to cover a very broad range of things. So It's not just, streamers and podcasters and stuff, but it's visual artists, movies, TV, music, cooperatives. So whatever your lane is for leftism, hopefully you'll be able to branch out a little bit and see some stuff you might not have otherwise considered. That's a big part of it. Just exposing you to new stuff that you can follow and be your new favorite. Okay, I think we're going to get into the reading tonight. Again, we are doing Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. Allie says a viral Twitch stream that produced an endless AI-generated Seinfeld parody show has been banned from the platform for violating community guidelines. I suppose, yeah, because I remember reading something recently how, well, we'll take this little tangent. This is kind of interesting. AI-generated stuff using licensed characters, even if it's not strictly speaking, a one-to-one copyright infringement. They're not just, taking Mickey Mouse, for example, or Seinfeld, and reproducing it elsewhere, but they're taking licensed characters. So like Jerry and George and all these Seinfeld characters would still be copywritten licensed characters. So I can see. Oh wait, it had transphobic remarks. Well, that makes it even worse. I mean, that sounded like fun if it was just going to be a Seinfeld parody. But geez, transphobic remarks. Ugh. Good, get them off the platform. They don't deserve Seinfeld. They don't deserve any sort of recognition for bullshit like that. But yeah, anyway, you can probably be sued for using licensed characters, even if an AI generator makes them slightly different. So yeah, interesting. Has a way to go. It does have a ways to go. It is funny to see. I think the best one recently, let me see if I can pull it up, was AI accepting the job. This is pretty good. Let's go to Know Your Meme. They usually do a good job. So the meme goes, I'll pull it up first. Meme goes, everyone, AI art will make designers obsolete. AI accepting the job. And here we have some AI generated images of AI accepting the job. And it has been often brought up, AI generated art or images have a lot of trouble with human hands. It just doesn't seem to understand that human hands tend to have 5 fingers and only one hand. I mean, here's someone shaking the hand of a hand that has a hand attached to it, shaking another hand. So yes, in many ways, but this is definitely in the realm of like uncanny valley. Like this is very human-like, but also very disconcerting, because if you were to encounter someone that had several hands attached together, that would just be a strange thing. Be a strange thing. I suppose it might technically be possible, but it's not what most people would think of when they think of people shaking hands. So interesting. So that, and like faces, it has a lot of trouble. Text has a lot of trouble, especially with the art ones. They don't seem to be able to generate legible text that makes any sort of sense. Then on the other hand, you see stuff that has been generated that's really amazing. Let's see if we can find another one. Um, there's some really specific ones that I've seen. We are really getting off on a tangent here. Here we've almost burned through half an hour, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll do this for just a second. Yeah, I guess this will help us get through the really heavy stuff that's coming up in the chapter tonight. So there was one that was like, it was like hippie monster worshipping cult that met in guys trashed out. Let's see if we're in the ballpark there. Nope. Let's take it back a little bit. It was something like that. And, you know, if you just glanced at it, those are some interesting ones. Let's see. Let's just look at like best AI art. That's phenomenal. And who knows what they're drawing from? That is always the things. You wonder, are the images they're drawing from already just really good and they're just combining them or slightly tweaking them the way that they tweak? That's not a good one. The way that they tweak like NFTs to make them dissimilar. So you have like an ape with sunglasses, an ape with pink sunglasses, an ape with pink sunglasses, but then a red shirt instead of yellow shirt, stuff like that. Is that all these AI art things are? Ooh, wow. It'd be fun to do a stream sometime and just play around with some generator. It's not like we're ever going to sell any of this stuff, but it is interesting to see. Sometimes you wonder, though. I mean, are these just memes and people are lying that it's not really AI art? Because they seem very specific and they give you a very specific image back. So are they lying, or did they just happen to luck out and find a cache of renderings from like, DeviantArt? I think DeviantArt was really upset that all of their users' art was being fed into AI generators without their permission. Interesting. Teeth sometimes are very strange in these two. They just don't quite look human. But yeah, that'd be fun to mess around with sometime. There's some good stuff, though. There you go. AI art generators for making and selling NFTs. Of course, why not? I mean, you already got one scam going. Why not push people who are already on the margins in a capitalist economy, that being artists? Why not take from them too at the same time? So this is just looks like a picture of Marilyn Monroe that you would have seen scraping and collaging their works without their consent. Yeah. And hey, that's a fine line too, because collage is a legitimate form of art. Even if you're taking other people's art, the collage combines it in ways that it never would have originally and makes a new piece of art out of that. So it is a legitimate art form, collage making. Yeah, see, I feel like that's got to be coming from something. That's not just just being generated whole cloth from a few prompts. These have to be pulled mostly out of well-tagged artist caches. 10 ways to make money with AI art. Oh my god. It's going to be this year's NFT, I swear. I swear, I swear. So Ali says, Nothing Forever, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week show has become a sensation on Twitch, racking up thousands of views. The show features crudely drawn recreations of characters from the comedy sitcom Seinfeld that played out scripts created by using open AI software. How do they play out these scripts? Where they just put up an image and then they have AI generated voice speaking over it, where people... I'd be interested to know. OpenAI, an artificial intelligence company, has become wildly popular in recent months for its chatbot, ChatGPT. Yeah, I heard that was cut above the rest. That chatbot, GPT, which generates conversational text. Freepedia site. Interesting. I wish there was an easy way for me to capture what you've written there. But very interesting stuff. I think that's probably enough of a tangent for now. Let's get into the actual book itself. So if you recall, we are in the heart of the chapter in Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States on slavery. We're looking at slavery. This has been the hardest chapter by far, so far. Not that it's a competition by any means. And certainly the chapters that detail actual genocide could definitely be top contenders for the worst things that have ever taken place on this continent. But yeah, slavery is definitely up there among the worst. Among the worst. Yeah, I've been arguing with, for whatever reason, I've decided to start arguing with libertarians again. They have some very, I don't even know how to describe it. Their logic is very circular. It starts with an axiom that they claim is just natural law. That seems to be where most of them are getting off the ground. So be like, people have the right to self-ownership, and they just declare that that's a right. Okay, maybe philosophically, sure, or people should have the right to that. You could say that's cool, as long as you're recognizing that this is not just some built out of pure logic from the I don't know, from the ground up, I guess. So they start from there. They're like, people have the right to self-ownership, because we keep getting into arguments about well, we decided that slavery was wrong and we got rid of it, and then we also decided feudalism was wrong, so we got rid of it. And a lot of these took wars to do, but we did. All I want to do is go one step further, decide that capitalism is also exploitative and overall destroying of human freedom. It is taking the freedom of the many for the freedom, so-called, of the few, that being the business owners, the owner class, the bourgeoisie, if you will. And they just don't get it. They start with these weird axioms again. People have rights to property, as though the right to property is just a law of physics. And I'm like, okay, again, that's a philosophy, but I can literally violate that law, and you can scream at me, you are violating my rights, you're violating my rights, but unless anyone uses force to stop me, it doesn't do you any good, does it? So is libertarian philosophy just an exercise in thinking? Is it just, applicable to an on-paper philosophy that could never actually work in the real world? And if so, what really is the point? I guess other than a thought exercise. It's just been interesting. It's just been interesting. Because like this person I was arguing about with slavery, he's like, well, slavery violates the person's right to self-ownership. So, you shouldn't, because I was asking them, should we allow business owners to hire slaves? Should we allow people to sell themselves into slavery? These are rights that we have taken away. That is business rights that we have curtailed through regulation. And he's like, oh, well, you know, uh, everyone has a right to self-ownership. So that means that if someone tries to put you into a contract of slavery, or you sell yourself into slavery, that is a contract that you are allowed to break at any time and walk away from. I'm like, okay, cool. But if that literally happened, do you think that they're just going to be like, oh, sorry, I didn't know I was violating your right to self ownership. Let me just stop that and tear up your contract. Or do you think they would use force to keep you in that position? Like, again, we just come back to this strange conception of reality where declaring a right, it makes it so as though it's like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy. You can run around the office screaming, I declare bankruptcy, but that doesn't actually do anything. Nothing changes when you say that. So you can declare, I have the right to self-ownership, which is, to start with, a really icky concept to me. People shouldn't be owned. People shouldn't even own themselves. People should be set aside from that which is able to be sold. Now, literally, I understand that isn't always the case. There are literal slaves today, both legally and illegally. But philosophically, sure, I can agree that people shouldn't be a thing that can be bought and sold. But I'm going to recognize that at some point there's just an axiom where I believe it is wrong to treat people as objects. I believe that people should have a right to bodily autonomy. Eventually it becomes axiomatic. It is something that I just believe. And guess what's at the bottom of all belief systems? It is emotion, which these libertarians also seem to really have distaste for. And I think that's why they've just convinced themselves that they've gotten somehow beyond that idea, that there can be just a pure logical philosophy that drives the ought. They apparently believe they have solved the is-ought gap in philosophy. They've described the world as it is, and from there can say how it should be based on how it is. But if you know anything about philosophy, you know that's an impossibility. Because someone can always just come along and say, I don't care about that same thing that you care about, and I'm going to use force to change the world in a way that you don't like. So all of your philosophical, this is how the world ought to be, doesn't really matter if you don't have anything to back it up in reality. It's been a wild ride, and I don't expect, it's one of those things. You don't expect to change anyone's mind, but it's fun to do to a certain extent, just to understand how very different people think. I gotta turn on my do not disturb, excuse me. Cool. Let me just turn on my do not disturb so I'm not getting buzzed constantly. Where is my stupid do not disturb? Oh, I feel like a boomer for a second here. Sorry, boomers, if you may be in the audience. Boomer is a mindset. It's not a physical thing. Focus. There we are. Focus. We're going to do not disturb. Can I just turn it the freak on? There has to be an easy way to do this. And it probably is not something I should figure out how to do live. Oh, here it is. There we go. Focus. Do not disturb. There we go. Cool. No more buzzing. That should help. I don't know where I was even at. So let's get into the book. Here we go. We are talking about. I think we just started talking about fugitive slaves and some of the laws that were surrounding that. So here we go. Like I said, this is rough stuff. If you, I really should put up another content warning, but at this point, I think I've given you fair warning. This is about the worst form of slavery that's existed that I'm aware of. I mean, perhaps there have been even more brutal systems, but this one's pretty bad. This one's pretty bad, and it's probably going to upset you that this was ever allowed and thought good and right and Christian. I would hope that would still upset you. Yes. Oh wait, did I miss you? Oh man, I've missed a lot of comments. I apologize for that. Hello, Blatjevig. It's just a flavor of I feel the universe is telling me people. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Let's put that up there. Yeah. Just that's basically what that right libertarian. And I keep trying to use that term right libertarian. And it's been fun. It's ruffled some feathers. People are like, oh, there's no spectrum of libertarianism. You either believe in freedom or you don't. I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, you kind of believe in a certain kind of freedom for a certain class of people, but it doesn't seem like you believe in it for everybody. And you are more a freedom absolutist in terms of like, I believe I personally should have the most freedom possible, even if that means that it comes at the expense of other people's freedom. To me, that's not that's not more freedom overall. I think freedom is a noble goal as long as it's pursued for the most people to the largest degree that it can be, which means you got to balance everyone's rights out with each other. You can't just have special freedom for a select elite group and theoretical freedoms for everyone else that doesn't play out in reality. Um, yeah, yeah. And Ali says too, libertarians advocate freedom, but what if people don't follow societal rule? And that's the thing they can never get past. Oh man, Sam Cedar is the master at debating libertarians. I don't think there's anyone finer because they come in with a big head of steam and they've probably won that's some air quotes in case it's too small for you to see. They probably won a lot of online arguments, uh, or at least in their mind they have from pulling out all this natural law crap or whatever their favorite. This is why my system is the only possible system, sort of BS. But then they get on to Sam's show and he's like, okay, well, we kind of need courts, right? We need courts to settle, to adjudicate contract law and property law. Like these things come up all the time. So if I just want to come and take your land and you're out in the wilderness and no one really knows you all that well around you, who is going to stop me? I'm gonna show up with my gun that happens to be bigger than your gun, and I'm gonna take it. How are you gonna stop me? And they'll be like, oh well, we'll sue you in court. Okay, what court? What court? And he's like, well, we'll have private courts, and I assume we'll set up competing courts. This is another just thing that libertarians always seem to take on faith is that competition is like this pure thing where just by competing, the strongest and the finest survives, and everyone else just falls by the wayside. So, like, well, we'll set up competing court systems, and the one that's the most trusted by the local populace, that's the one that will win out. And then Sam will be like, well, okay, so I've gone to this other court, and they say that I have a claim. So here, they even print me off a deed right there in the courthouse. I have a deed to this property, so get off my land. What are you going to do now? They say, oh, well, my court. And it's like, well, okay, but my court says otherwise. And if there are competing courts, then, they're equally legitimate in the eyes of at least some people. So how are you going to stop me from stealing your land? And they just get madder and madder and madder because they don't really have anything at the end of it because they believe if you just set up the system in the right way, then everyone just respects each other's property rights, which are God given apparently, and no one ever aggresses on the other because they've all signed on to the non-aggression principle. And if 75% of the populace uh, wouldn't want to use force and coercion to steal things from others, then they will all band together against those that do, whenever such a thing comes up. And, Sam will point out something like, well, okay, right now, a very small numerical minority basically has all the money and all the power. You always hear the statistic like the 1% own 50% of the wealth, something like that. They also buy politicians. They set up the system for their own favor, right? This is a very small minority doing this. If the rest of us populace is not cool with that, I mean, literally we could. 99% of the people could band together and overthrow this power elite, but we don't, because we are each individually afraid of that. So what changes in your scenario? What's to stop some big bully on the block to come through and just take what's they believe is theirs, or they want to take? They never have an answer for that, because you can't have competing systems of law in the same place. The law only functions if it has the backing of, at least the tacit endorsement of most people. Otherwise, no one would follow the law. Everything would just break down. So the idea that you're going to have competing systems of law and competing ideas of what constitutes this person's property and that person's property, it's just it's half-baked ideology, and it doesn't play in reality. It couldn't. And it's oh man, I'm on this libertarian kick for the moment, but all the libertarians in this group they constantly bring up the idea. This is another one of those things that they just seem to pull out of thin air as an article of faith, which is ironic, because they say, oh, all you communists there, how does it feel to be in a Gnostic religion? That's what Marxism is, and everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? How is it a Gnostic religion? What is it? It's like, well, it is. You guys just accept all this stuff on faith, like that labor creates all value. Well, that's just an article of faith. And they're like, and I've been through this argument with many of them and been like, you could be they always like to bring up the idea of someone's dying of thirst in the desert. To a man dying of thirst in the desert, a glass of water is infinitely valuable. So it is the desire that creates value. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that may be true in theory, but unless he makes it to an oasis and someone already has a water vessel, so that has been manufactured by labor, brought that water vessel to that particular oasis, where it has been procured by the person who manages the oasis, and that person managing the oasis is then in a position to sell you a drink of water or give you a drink of water. Until all of that labor happens, it's just theoretical. So theoretically, yeah, use value could be infinite, but still that is meaningless unless you have the labor that comes and produces it. So even if that man is like, oh, I happen to be a billionaire, I will give you all of my stock in in Tesla, if you just give me a drink of water, and he goes through with it, okay, that drink of water has in reality found a price point, and money has been exchanged for it. You don't then get around the idea or the reality that none of that could have taken place. That entire transaction could not take place without labor. So even if that guy was like, oh, I'll give you 50 cents for that drink of water, and they agreed to that price, it doesn't matter. It could be worth very little or very lot or a whole lot, but whatever it ends up being worth, it only attains that value through being realized by labor. It is only brought into being through labor. So without labor, you don't have any of that stuff. And I don't know, these libertarians just don't seem to be able to get that through their head. They're just like, well, but most of the value is subjective, so we can just move on from the entire debate. We don't ever have to think about other types of value or other ways of looking at value, yeah. Much should water be labeled or valued at $300 a shower once? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. The fact is, it doesn't matter what it ends up being valued or sold as. Um, another way to look at it is equal. You could equally say that if you have an entire labor force that is making, you know, uh, dung pies. Let's say they've perfected a technique to bake dung pies in the hot sun during the summertime and sell them. You could have a lot of labor that goes into that. Just countless hours toiling away in the hot sun making these pies, and when they come to market, nobody wants them, so their effective value ends up being zero. True, that is true. It is equally true, though, that um, they could. Oh, geez, I'm losing my train of thought. It is equally true, though, that you have a successful business, and you make tin roof pies, and people are just going crazy for these pies. Okay, it's found that their value is astronomical. You still don't get those pies into customers' hands, even if they really, 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 really want them, without labor. So no matter what the value ends up being, is irrelevant to the fact that labor created them. Hence, labor creates all value. That is an independent fact from people value things differently. And there's a way to put it. It is labor value versus use value. These are different ways of valuing things, and they don't necessarily have to line up. They don't necessarily have to. They don't necessarily interact with each other at all. They're just different parts of the process, and you need both to have a viable business. Any Marxist would accept that. Yeah, sewers are valuable. Good point. Who's going to pay for a sewer though? Well, the taxpayers will. Uh, and that's another point. Like in this pure libertarian state, who does pay for the sewer system? Who pays for the roads? Is this all just voluntary? Because I mean, if you're gonna run your municipality the way that we do like charity, well, it seems like things are never going to be solved then. Because I mean, how many charities do you know of that have just one day dusted off their hands? Well, such and such people are no longer starving in Africa. We're just going to close up shop. We're not needed anymore. What charity has ever put themselves out of business? I mean, charity is a business, but even if they are a nonprofit, that doesn't seem like a good way then to run society, in just the hopes and the prayers that enough good people will do the right thing. Because these things, they can very quickly slide in one direction or another. You could have a huge disaster, and there's a huge outpouring of goods and services to help your fellow man out. Don't think of the cost of it. We're all in a bad situation together. Let's do it. And yeah, that could be a fine way to run things while there's a disaster running. But at the same time, things could slowly deteriorate. And you could be a newcomer to town and be like, hey, I mean, this road kind of sucks, but obviously these people around here are not paying for it. I don't feel like paying for it either. At what point do you then turn it around and be like, hey guys, these roads, they're getting real bad. Let's do something about it, please. And then they'll be like, well, I'm not doing it till he does it. I'm not doing it till he does it. On and on down the line. And you're just at a stalemate once again. It just seems like a really sloppy, inefficient way to run a society, just on the idea that every need's going to be met just through charity, basically, is what it is. Oh, thank you for the content warning too, Allie. I do appreciate that. All right, enough gab, enough dunking on weird libertarians and their strange uh, axiomatic beliefs that they refuse to recognize as such. Let's get into the book now.
John Brown was executed by the state of Virginia with the approval of the national government.
Oh, there you go.
It was the
We're
national
talking about John
government
Brown.
which, while weakly enforcing the law ending the slave trade, sternly enforced the laws providing for the return of fugitives to slavery. It was the national government that, in Andrew Jackson's administration, collaborated with the South to keep abolitionist literature out of the mails in the southern states.
Yeah, I think we did read part of this. I think I backed up a little bit. Further proof that Andrew Jackson is the worst president of all history. I will stand by that claim. I will die on this hill. Far worse than Trump because he was actually effective at what he did. Far worse than Bush. I suppose that might be debatable. Bush was pretty effective at destroying and gutting regulations. Yeah, Trump had some success at that too. Andrew Jackson, responsible for the Trail of Tears, responsible for this very pro slavery, trying to keep slavery intact. Flouted other parts of the government to virtually no consequences. Somehow was never impeached. Just an all out and out horrible man. I don't know that there's any redeeming qualities of Andrew Jackson. Let's hear some more about him.
It was the Supreme Court of the United States that declared in 1857 that the slave Dred Scott could not sue for his freedom because he was not a person, but property.
Interesting. Another thing I've learned about libertarians, they're very set on defining things very either way too broadly or way too narrowly. And through that, they can kind of deflect a lot of arguments. Like, try telling a libertarian that there's a difference between private property, that is the property that allows someone to run a business, the physical factory, the machinery, the raw goods, the transportation network, stuff like that, or even just the capacity to perform a service. There's a difference between private property then and personal property. That is property that you need for your subsistence. So your food, your shelter, I would argue education, healthcare, things of that nature. There's a difference between these two. But they just, no, we're going to call it all private property. Got in a really long, horrible, tedious discussion with this one guy who from the get-go purposely misunderstood my definition of private properties. I'm like, the question was police. What do you all libertarians think about the police? And I said, why would libertarians care about police violence? Police back up private property owners. That is their main function. And he was like, oh yeah, well, police steal more private property than anybody else. And he knew, because I found out later. He's like, yeah, basically I knew what you meant by private property, but that's a stupid definition, and I don't accept it. There's no difference between private property and personal property. Because that statistic is true. Police steal more personal property than all the criminals combined, mostly through civil asset forfeitures. But yeah, he was taking it to mean but by conflating the two definitions of property, he could then demonstrate that, well, I mean, obviously if the police are not respecting private property, meaning all non-government property, then they can't possibly be in league with capitalism because capitalism is based on private property, blah, 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 blah. Dumb stuff like that. That's the level of discourse that I get. And it's just, so here we are again, purposely muddying the definition of words so that you can be, legally speaking, consistent, even if we know, and they knew then that there's nothing all that different between various so-called races. Race was a concept that was even that even came into being around that time, to justify slavery, right? Because how do you determine who is allowed to be a slave, especially when we're talking about hereditary slavery, where your children can inherit your title as slave or your status as slave? How do we determine that? If not, and we can't just go by color, because there are darker skinned so-called white people and there are lighter skinned so-called black people. So how do we do it? Well, it has to be something that we can impose. And so the concept of race was conceived of. It became a hereditary thing, and the thing that, because before that people would not identify as white or black or anything like that. They would identify from their country of origin. I'm Italian, I'm Polish, I am, Tanzanian. I don't know if Tanzania was even a country at that time, but that's beside the point. People would identify with a country of origin or an ethnic enclave within that country, and so on and so forth. The idea of all the light-skinned Europeans calling themselves white and then dividing themselves out from the rest of the world. Kind of strange, isn't it, that Europe is its own continent, even though it is part of a very large landmass that otherwise would be called a continent, but somehow it's not Asia, Interesting that the lines were divided that way. It's almost like it was on purpose as a division of race, so that we can say white people are from Europe and black people are from Africa and Asian people are from Asia, even though that is such a wide array of peoples. But yeah, these convenient ways of distinguishing people then make very little or much more neat ways, neat in terms of, clean lines between different groups of people. And then, of course, you declare your Caucasoid race the superior one, cause reasons, and everyone else must therefore be inferior. And, the most inferior being, I won't even say the word they used for black people back then to distinguish that race, but it was as a justification for slavery. Important to keep in your mind as we talk about these various laws. So, of course, they say that black people are oh, let me go back, Allie. I see you just made a comment to me, or whispered to me. But yeah, this is justification for slavery. That's how race was conceived of. Yeah, so Ali, you'd asked me if the voting was still happening. Voting has ended for the 2022, the third annual Lefties Awards. It ended this last Saturday. So unfortunately, if you weren't able to vote, time is out for that, because I need to prepare for the show, which will be coming up at the end of this month on the 25th. So sorry if you missed that, Ali. I'll do better next year to remember to alert you to it when it's happening, because I know not everyone uses Facebook, and that primarily is where these announcements go out. So I'll do a better job of reminding people when I'm doing my streams. Hopefully I won't be quite as busy next year at this time, because I haven't been streaming as often as I once had. But yeah, using trying to use these definitions to get around the argument that one person is a person, another person is not a person, because they look different. That's what's happening back in this time, in this Supreme Court case. Why are they not a person? Oh, because we say so. Eventually it becomes axiomatic, which any philosophy does. Just this one happens to be not philosophy that. Oh, thank you for pinning that. Oh, I didn't realize it did that. That's awesome. Thank you, Allie. This one happens to be a philosophy that is not for human kindness and freedom and the flourishing of people in general. It is for the benefit of the few at the expense of everyone else. So it's a philosophy that I disagree with on those grounds.
Such a
Continuing
national
on.
government would never accept an end to slavery by rebellion. It would only end slavery under conditions controlled by whites, and only when required by the political and economic needs of the business elite in the North. It was Abraham Lincoln who combined perfectly the needs of business, the political ambition of the new Republican Party, and the rhetoric of humanitarianism. He would keep the abolition of slavery not at the top of his list of priorities, but close enough to the top so it could be pushed there temporarily by abolitionist pressures and by practical political advantage. Lincoln could skillfully blend the interests of the very rich and the interests of the black at a moment in history when these interests met. And he could link these two with a growing section of Americans, the white, up-and-coming, economically ambitious, politically active middle class. As Richard Hofstadter puts it, quote, thoroughly...
Just by the way, the middle class, another fairly meaningless term, overly broad in its definition, which is another reason that libertarians like to use it to talk about how such and such percentage has moved into this class or that class or the classes don't, the way they're conceived of don't really change. There's always about the same amount of people in each bracket. Basically, you just take the highest income earners, the lowest income earners, and then you divide it into quintiles, which is also another very annoying way to divide things up into 5. But basically, the different quintiles, they're ever shifting what fits into each of these quintiles based on average income, and so on and so forth. So why they picked a number that can't be divided in half, even, I don't know. But like median household income is what determines who is in poverty, who is classified as rich. Like there's no real clear line of that either. These are all just ways to kind of muddy the discussion and use statistics from year to year as though they're comparing apples to apples, when the definition of who falls into the middle class, who falls into the upper class, who falls into the working or the lower class change year to year based on averages, average income and stuff like that. So to my mind, they're basically worthless terms. The way that I feel is a useful division of different classes is by power. Power, first and foremost. Who has the most power in this country? It is the business owners. Now, there are some very wealthy doctors who may work for a hospital, or lawyers who may work for a firm, and they may even be able to throw their weight around a little bit politically, locally. They may be able to use their wealth and their name recognition to, say, run for local office, or even work their way up to a higher level of office at some point. But they're not hiring lobbyists to advocate for their business interests. They don't really have much of a say over the running of their particular hospital. Now they had, being a higher powered worker than most, they're threatening to quit or move to a different job, or threatening some sort of action against their company would carry more weight than an average worker. But they still don't carry the same weight as whoever runs the hospital, the administration. And again, they even someone as rich as like a Bezos or a Musk or whatever, even if they were to hire lobbyists, which maybe they do, I don't know why they would use their personal fortune to do that rather than their companies, but still, they probably could if they wanted to. It would never be on the scale that all of industry and the lobbyists that they hire and the campaign contributions that they raise amount to. It would just be a totally different scale, much smaller. So to me, those that actually have the power to control the outcome of elections, to sway policy in their own favor, uh, to hire and fire, to decide how the income into the particular business is being divvied up, to decide working conditions, to decide all sorts of things. The people that have this power, to me, seem to be in a separate class from everyone else. So that means that everyone who is a a rich person, but also is rich by working for another person, they're still in the working class. Now, they may not feel that they have the same class interests. They may not be able to be swayed to, believing in socialism because capitalism has worked out for them very well personally. But it's important to remember that when it comes down to the dividing lines of power, they are still on our side, whether they like it or not, whether they operate that way or not, whatever they may say about it. So to me, those are the important dividing lines. Do you have the power to, hire and fire hundreds of people? Do you have the power to influence elections, to send lobbyists, to set the rules in your favor? Now then there's the small business people, and usually they're thought of as kind of in the same class as the bourgeoisie, the owner class, because they technically are. And they technically use their position as an owner to extract excess labor value out of their workers. That is the primary way that they make their money, even if they are also a worker. A lot of their money is coming from other people's efforts. That's just how it is. Otherwise, why would you have employees if you were not getting more out of them than they are demanding? So, they may be called the petty or the petite bourgeoisie, but really when it comes down to it, they are always going to side with their own class interests, unless they are somehow enlightened enough to be a class trader. That's very rare, but I suppose it could happen. But it's best to think of them as just part of the owner class or the bourgeoisie, or however you want to conceive it. Bourgeoisie is such a cumbersome word. I think just owner class is a little more clean and easy to understand, especially for Americans who really don't have a grasp of this because we're never taught it. Anything left of capitalism is just thought of as not even worth consideration. If it's talked about at all, it's to deride it, to show why it doesn't work, it could never work, it's a utopian dream, on and on. That is how it's treated, even in academia, despite what, Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro would have you think about liberal or communist professors just indoctrinating everyone as though they have some kind of mind control ray that they just turn on in campuses, and suddenly, fully adult humans are incapable of thinking for themselves, and they just, they come out quoting Marx and asking for the workers of the world to unite. Of course, none of that's true. This is just hyperbole that they use to insert their own slimy, half-baked ideas into colleges and muddy the waters and try and take away any ability for colleges to, exercise their own freedom of academic choice. I don't know how to phrase it. Let's see what you said there, Allie. So, middle class means not poor but not wealthy. What about middle class minorities? Good question. Let's move down so I can read the comment more fully here. Oh, I need to turn off my voting thing. I'm so sorry. Let me go into my stream elements quick. Sorry, this has been a very, very loose and tangential stream so far. I hope you're all enjoying it anyway. So I gotta change my event. So we'll turn off that timer for my restream for now. Anyway, let's see what else you had to say here. Oh, Massachusetts only has 2 wheelchair repair companies out of 6 million people? That's like criminal. Is that where you're? I don't actually know where you're based out of, Allie. Is that where you're from? Is Massachusetts? Man. Yeah. Sorry about that link that doesn't work there, Allie. Again. Let's see. What are some other comments you've made here? Does political science actually mean endless debate of class and/or terms for 35 years? Well, I mean, I don't think it should. I think it should be pretty clear to anyone where the lines of power break down. Yeah, try hiring a lobbyist as just a worker. Try saying, "Oh, you're in Massachusetts. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." Then I don't know if you yourself make use of a wheelchair, but if you do, I'm very sorry to hear that is there's only that. That sucks. Man, where's like 3D printing when we need it, huh? I've heard of people like 3D printing casts and other hard to manufacture parts. Why haven't we done that for like devices that help people become more ambulatory? Some people are house poor or stock poor. Does that help society? No. Ah, yeah. Okay. Well, that is really unfortunate, my friend, and I'm sorry to hear that things are so rough out there in Massachusetts. You'd think such a otherwise liberal state would care a little bit more about people with different needs, the less able-bodied among us, and it sucks that they apparently don't. But yeah, plenty of people are so-called middle class just because they fall into a certain income bracket, but then they have, student loan debts or different other credit card debts, things that still make them living paycheck to paycheck, even if they're technically on the higher side of median household income. My household here, my household of 2, we are above median household income together. When all is said and done, we still struggle quite a bit to save any money at all. We don't have any stocks. We don't live in our own house. We came close. We almost got to live in our own house, but they changed the terms on us at the very last minute. But technically, I think we are middle class, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, a nice apartment at that, market rate, heated parking garage, elevator. That's actually a big plus. I don't think I've ever rented an apartment on my own that has had an elevator. I guess in my dorms when I was in college, they had elevators. That's a little different. Not exactly cush living conditions there. But yeah, lots of nice amenities in this apartment complex. I a balcony for the first time ever. I have some outdoor gardening space, so I'm not necessarily complaining. But at the same time, to think that I'm somehow making it when so many people are not, I don't know. It seems like I need a little more to actually be in that comfortable position. And that, that's the thing with these nebulous terms, though, is people assign their own values to it. Does middle class mean you got a house and the picket fence and like the American, the new American dream sort of, 2 cars in the garage sort of thing, kids off to college? Is that middle class? Is just having a certain income middle class? When it comes down to it, these terms don't really help us all that much, in my opinion. Does it mean living in the suburbs? Does it mean it could be for some people? Can people in the city be middle class too? Are there middle class urban districts? It's hard to say because these terms don't really help us make sense of the world. They if anything, they're used as a cudgel for the other. So, you know, what's his name? John. Tip of my tongue, boy. John McCain. When asked, what's a rich guy? How much do you have to be rich? And he said, I don't know, $5 million. Says the guy who has over $1 million in assets and several investment properties that are luxury houses that he owned around the country that he just rented out or maybe stayed in as vacation homes, stuff like that. Someone who, to the average person, I would think, is a rich dude. But of course, he wasn't rich, and then that's really, to me, that's really the political value of the term middle class. Is it's a class that owners can hide inside of. Then, oh, I'm not part of the elite class. I only have $60,000 a year in take home or $80,000 a year in take home pay, and I'm running my little boat shop on the edge of town here, so I mean, I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm middle class. And then, like, but maybe in that town you hold 50% of the jobs available, are jobs working for your little boat shop or your small manufacturing operation or the local Dairy Queen. So in terms of political power, you probably have a really big stick to swing if you really want things to be a certain way or not, because you can always threaten to pull out of town, relocate somewhere else. You're probably going to be one of the biggest donors around to political campaigns. You may even have enough clout and name recognition and money to run yourself for local elections. So maybe in that local town, you are the powerful. You are the power elite. So even if you're not technically in the upper class, whatever arbitrary nebulous cutoff that means, you still operate as though you are in terms of power. You are what people think of as a rich person or a wealthy person, whether or not you have the assets to fall into that category across the board, across the United States, or whatever country you happen to be in. Yeah, middle class, 80,000 in a bank account in the bank. Are you middle class then? It changes all the time. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, landlords are being taught tenants are bank accounts. The unfair mindset. I mean, that's basically, Allie, how landlords look at their tenants. They are a means to a paycheck. They do all this work providing housing as though the housing sprung up out of nowhere, or they built it with their own hands, or that it wouldn't exist if not for the noble landlord riding through the land and investing here and investing there so that properties might grow. Of course, what they're doing is hoarding land. That's what a landlord does. That's how they make their money. They, together with the other landlords, buy up a whole bunch of and here we go again, the nebulousness of terms. But we'll just stick with real estate. They buy up the bulk of or even close to half of the available real estate, and then rent it. That real estate existed before they bought it. It will exist after they've sold it. But they're taking it off the market for you to buy for your own personal use. They are a useless middleman. And sure, they may perform the services of a property management company. They may send out a repair person when something breaks, or they may not. They may even hire a property management company, but they themselves don't actually do anything as a landlord. To be a landlord is just to own property and expect money for it. That's it. Property management is a legitimate service, but it's a service that people would need whether or not they were in cooperative housing, whether or not they manage their own discrete unit entirely themselves. They would just act as their own property manager at that point. You know, your pipes break and you call the plumber, or you fix it yourself. You are then acting as the property manager of your property. Landlords don't provide anything. They are just parasites on people's checks, basically. Yeah, that's true too. And more, Allie, people, these large companies are seeing that one of the last safe places to park their money, because other investments have been seen as very risky, especially now that NFTs are basically off the table as a wise investment. They're trying to park their money in real estate because that's one thing that they don't really make more of. That's land. Now, I mean, you can tear down a single level building and build multiple levels above it, and that's about as close as you can get to creating new land, because you are creating more housing than ever could exist with a single level, right? So, but still, there, yeah, NFT and crypto was always a joke, Allie. But still, like, what they're banking on, these investment portfolio managers like BlackRock and so forth, what they're banking on is they can buy up enough of these investment properties that they will make a return. Because one thing that has largely been true in U.S. real estate is the value of it just goes up, just line goes up. It's kind of like how they believe that NFTs were going to go up forever. Housing bubbles notwithstanding, but still, they believe that's a more salient and salient's probably not the right word, a wiser investment anyway, because they're more likely to make a good return on their investment, because historically you do in real estate. Just so happens that these are also things that people need to live, that is housing. So by buying up all these units of housing that otherwise would have gone to people to use for their own personal use as their home, their shelter, something that every human needs, they're just getting in the way and becoming those middlemen again, renting it out, doing Airbnbs, really making it hard for so-called middle-class people, again, whatever that term means to you, to buy their own home. There's a reason. Like, there's getting way too off topic, but if you look at a graph of the different generations and how much of them own their own property, there's a pretty steep curve. I don't know which way I should. Yeah, I guess that's the right way. As you get up to millennials, where we have a very low rate of home ownership, and then, I mean, Gen Z, the Zoomers, probably don't have a hope of owning a home, which sucks. My plan for my children, once they come of age, is to somehow be able to afford my own home by then. That's really my goal, so that they can have a place to stay if they decide to move out of their mom's house. And then my goal is to never ever charge them rent, because the absolute last thing I want to be is a landlord to my own offspring. How cruel can you be? Not to say that I wouldn't expect them to, like, sometimes buy their own food and provide for some of their own needs themselves, assuming that they can get a job, which they all certainly smart enough and competent enough to do. But that's more for their own use. I won't expect them to procure their own housing until they're ready, until they're able financially to get out on their own. And that's the plan. But it's, man, seeming like homeownership for myself is becoming such a distant thing, because the interest rates at some point, you would think, would have to go back down, but they just keep climbing. And at one point they said, oh, they're going to crash this spring. Now they've moved it back past the summer, I think, is the most estimates. Maybe it just won't happen at all as these firms continue to make housing that is available for personal use, personal purchase, more and more difficult to come by. Maybe it'll just keep going up forever, and eventually, the homeowner will be a thing of the past. They'd probably like that. I think that's one way they can just sit back and extract wealth from everybody into perpetuity, assuming that we don't do anything to fight back. Oh boy. Well, on that happy note. No problem, Ali. You know what? I have ADHD, and my brain really likes tangents, especially if it's on some topic that really interests me. And housing is a topic that really interests me. I went to school for urban planning. I have a master's in urban planning. So, I'm fine with it. I've come to accept that this is the way my brain is wired, and to kind of try and ride those tangents as best I can to still get some productive thought out of them. I hope I don't just come off as rambling and incoherent. And if I do, you all in the audience are always welcome to put in your own 2 cents. Anyway, let's get back into the book.
Middle class in his ideas, he
Awesome
spoke
segue.
for those
Good
millions
job.
of Americans who had begun their lives as hired workers, as farmhands, clerks, teachers, mechanics, flatboatmen, and rail splitters, and had passed into the ranks of landed farmers, prosperous grocers, lawyers, merchants, physicians, and politicians. Lincoln could argue with lucidity and passion against slavery on moral grounds while acting cautiously in practical politics. He believed, quote,
Making the big speech. Remember, this day is the day that the tides started to lower back down. This is the day that the CO2 started to be sucked back out of the atmosphere. Remember this day, the day of my campaign, that we started reversing global warming and all these other things. That was the speech that Obama made for his inauguration. No. Oh, I'm sorry. His acceptance of the nomination. I think it was the first time that he got nominated for president. Yeah, what happened to all that stuff? This reminds me a lot of the Democratic Party today, which, hey, lo and behold, after all the Dixiecrats were forced out of the Democratic Party, they took the historical place of the Republicans, by and large. So very much the party of Lincoln had much more in line with modern day Democrats than the Democrats of that time. Anyway, yeah, Lincoln talking a big game, but in action it's always pragmatism and slow roll and small, almost imperceptible incremental change. Reminds me a lot of modern day Democrats, doesn't it? Doesn't it to you too? Oh, thanks, Sally. Yeah, we will still see the State of the Union tomorrow. I don't know. I really hope that Joe Brandon pulls out some good stuff, and he can get back on his student debt cancellation, maybe get people another stimulus, because people just aren't recovering even still from the downturns that came about with COVID. I'm not holding my breath with him doing anything progressive. At least the federal government codified same-sex marriage, so I guess they can't say they don't do anything, but that costs them very little, either politically or it doesn't cost them anything monetarily. There's no budget allocated to that. It's a social issue, pretty purely. Oh yeah, GOP is against the student loan forgiveness. They want to keep us all right where we're at, debt slaves the rest of our lives, because that makes for good, desperate little workers that are willing to take less than we otherwise would in the way of compensation at our jobs. So of course they like that system. and they're just so just so vindictive that somehow the argument that, well, I had to pay off my debts and so you all should have to go through that same pain, holds currency amongst Republicans. I mean, it's sad. It's sad how absolutely cruel they are and how little they're willing to even shroud it anymore. Yeah, they can't have people getting anything good, getting out from under debt. I mean, it shows that really they are, their principles are all just maintaining the current order. They don't care about debt or the economy or anything like that unless it pertains to them and maintaining their power. But they conveniently ignore that if we were to wipe away all student debt, hey, suddenly all those millions upon millions of students who were paying back into nothingness, paying back debt, which doesn't really add a lot to the economy, now have all that money freed up. Those billions, the trillions of dollars. I think it's a little over $1 trillion is total student debt. That trillion is gonna go somewhere, and guess what? It's probably gonna go not going to be squirreled away in savings accounts or in just invested into the stock market or anything like that. It's going to go towards buying stuff, which would help the U.S. economy. But they don't care about that. They care about being cruel and holding those no account Democrats accountable for all the promises they made to repay that debt. It's more important for them to uphold the principle of paying off something that you said you would than it is to actually help people and make the country better. Because they don't care about making the country, but they like the country as it is. They don't want it better. In fact, they'd like it probably to go backwards so they have even more power. Rage applying. Your resume bomb for jobs. Oh, man. Rage applying. That's so funny. It's so funny, the idea that it could somehow be negative. Again, everything's coming back to libertarianism tonight. All the libertarians who their constant refrain is, well, you're not coerced into your job because you can always go somewhere else. Ugh. As though it's not just an oligopoly of business owners and you got to pick one of them. So you want to be shot, you want to be stabbed. Which choice do you make? But even that now is being criticized. The idea that if you don't like your job, it's okay to go somewhere else. It's range applying. Oh man, the terms they come up with, the quiet quitting, which is just doing your job as described and not going above and beyond and trying to move up. Just people are just not falling for it. And kudos to Gen Z for really leading the charge on this, that they're just fed up with these fairy tales of capitalism and how if you just keep your nose to the grindstone, you'll get ahead. Well, there's only so many positions to get ahead into, so some of you aren't going to get it even if you're all qualified for it. So they're seeing that for what it is, that any one person might get ahead by doing that, but we're not all going to get ahead by doing that. So why kill yourself for a job that could replace you if you drop dead in the parking lot on the way in this morning and wouldn't really care? Yeah, that was the quiet quitting. Just doing your job as described. As though that's a negative thing. Like, well, there's other things in your life than your job? How dare you? Now this rage applying, where you get fed up with your jobs, you apply for another one. Isn't that the whole thing? Isn't that the whole thing that justifies the coercion that is the capitalist system? It's not coercion because you can go to another person who is going to give you a raw deal. You're going to have to give most of the value that you generate to them, and you only get a pittance back to keep maintaining you as a living cog in their machine. How dare you even go through that exercise and hope you can get more. No, what happened to company loyalty? What happened to just sticking it out even though they ream you day in and day out for every little thing? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, corporate has been going too far. Sorry, let's continue on this book. I think I'm just avoiding it because it's just so bleak, but it's important to, we shouldn't close our eyes just because it's
That
unpalatable.
the institution of slavery is founded on injustice and bad policy, but that the promulgation of abolition doctrines tends to increase rather than abate its evils.
Where have we heard that recently? Oh, I agree with the message of Black Lives Matter, but do they have to shut down roads to do it? Aren't they just hurting their own cause? I agree that Colin Kaepernick probably has some good points to stand up for, but does he gotta kneel for the national anthem? Isn't that just hurting his cause more than he is? Yeah, look, this is the common tactic. Look for it next time there's a mass protest of any kind. The common tactic is to always endlessly debate the method that a message is delivered in, so as to avoid ever having to talk about the contents of the message. Because if you can just keep he shouldn't have kneeled, he should have done this. He shouldn't have done that. He should have started a blog or a stream where he could vent on his own time, not while he's at work. He shouldn't be talking about these things. He on his stream. He should just be playing football. That's what he's getting paid for. So he should just shut up and stop making his team look. Oh, he shouldn't be you know. This or that or the other thing. The method is never acceptable. And if you're constantly debating that, you never have to say, well, what was he actually trying to say? You can make up stuff and just throw it in there because no one ever gets to that part, really. This is a common, Republican pundit tactic. He just hates America. They'd come up with this really easy answer for it, a very clean, easy to understand soundbite that you can plaster all over the news, have all the talking heads repeat, completely unnuanced, completely missing any point that he was trying to make, ignoring his entire message, just so they never have to actually talk about it, because they're banking on people debating. First and foremost, should he have done it in that way? And is this way respectful? Is it not respectful? Is it, actually, kneeling for the flag shows that you're mourning for the wounded country. It's a sign of respect. And he they don't care about all that backstory. They don't want to hear all that. Oh, just kneeling man bad, football man bad. I want to watch show. Shut up. Let me watch show. Don't ever challenge me. This is my safe space where I don't have to have politics injected into it constantly, as though politics is just another thing that you do. It's not something that affects every aspect of everyone's lives. It's not a matter of life and death in many cases. It's just another hobby, basically, in the minds of these people. So watch for that. They will endlessly debate the way that a message is transmitted, so they never have to address its contents. And that's what we're talking about here. The doctrines themselves tend to increase rather than abate evil. I think this is Lincoln speaking even at this point. So let's continue on.
Put against this Frederick Douglass's statement on struggle, or Garrison's, "Sir, slavery will not be overthrown without excitement, a most tremendous excitement." Lincoln read the Constitution strictly to mean that Congress, because of the 10th Amendment, reserving to the states powers not specifically given to the national government, could not constitutionally bar slavery in the states. When it was proposed to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, which did not have the rights of a state but was directly under the jurisdiction of Congress, Lincoln said this would be constitutional, but it should not be done unless the people in the district wanted it. Since most there were white, This killed the idea. As Hofstadter said of Lincoln's statement, it, quote, breathes the fire of an uncompromising insistence on moderation, unquote. Lincoln refused to denounce the fugitive slave law publicly. He wrote to a friend, quote, I confess I hate to see the poor creatures hunted down, but I bite my lips and keep quiet, unquote. And when he did propose in 1849 as a congressman a resolution to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, he accompanied this with a section requiring local authorities to arrest and return fugitive slaves coming into Washington. This led Wendell Phillips, the Boston abolitionist, to refer to him years later as, quote, that slave hound from Illinois, unquote.
Oh,
He opposed slavery, but could not see blacks as equals, so a constant theme in his approach was to free the slaves and to send them back to Africa. In his 1858 campaign in Illinois for the Senate against Stephen Douglas, Lincoln spoke differently depending on the views of his listeners.
Oh yeah, that's true, Allie. Trump trying to say, I hope I'm your favorite. You know, the best, better than even Reagan, better than even Lincoln. You know, he was obviously doing that just to inflame his detractors. So it definitely took a lot of nerve, but you just don't take the bait because maybe he really does think that. Maybe his ego really is that gigantic. But it doesn't matter. Like ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like. What did he do that compares to fighting a civil war to end slavery and winning? What did he do? What decree that's comparable to the Emancipation Proclamation did he make? Anyone who thinks about it for more than a few seconds realizes it's not true. So my take is just laugh at it because it's a joke. Because he's a joke, and move on with your day. Don't give him so much energy anymore. He's out of power. He's not likely to get the nomination again. Because Republicans, even his diehard supporters, are pretty fickle. They're always just looking for the next strong man to rally behind. And right now, it seems like DeSantis is taking that mantle up more so than others. Still talking about windmill. That's the thing about Trump. He can never give up a grudge. He will be on that same what is the phrase? Be on that same sawhorse forever. His ego just will not allow it. He's been slighted, and his enemies must be crushed. And if they're not, then he just keeps talking about it forever. So his hatred of windmills just goes back to. Was it his golf course in Scotland where they're doing an offshore wind project and he didn't like how they looked. He thought it would lower the value of his business. And so that's why he's against it. It's really that simple. Made his business look bad, so he's against it forever. And he will always talk bad about windmills. Oh, all the poor birds. Oh, the birds are going to hit it. You don't care about the birds. Come on. How many birds do you think are killed by coal-fired plants? Or the mining of coal? How much habitat is lost through the mining of fossil fuels or fracking or whatever? Come on. That's so silly. Oh God, he is the victim king. And he simultaneously has one of the largest egos with one of the most frail egos at the same time. I guess it's his ego in both counts. He really seems to think a lot of himself, but he really needs everyone else to think a lot of him at all times too. Even the small hands thing, it seemed like that really, really upset him. He would send pictures of his hands to news pundits who mentioned they were small, and he'd circle his hands in gold Sharpie on the pictures just to prove how big his hands and normal size his hands were. He's very concerned with being normal. He doesn't want to be thought of as a freak in any way. The voters got out and decided they had enough. Let's not march further down the road to fascism, at least at the federal level. That was the result of that election. Not that we're going to get anything great out of it, but I guess there still is time in Joe Brandon's administration. Let's keep going in the book, though.
And also, perhaps, depending on how close it was to the election. Speaking in Illinois in July, in Chicago, he said, quote, "Let us discard all this quibbling about this man and the other man, this race and that race, and the other race being inferior, and therefore they must be placed in an inferior position. Let us discard all these things and unite as one people throughout the land until we shall once more stand up, declaring that all men are created equal." Unquote.
Interesting, that line that has been woven through so much of this history book that we've looked at. That concept and the Declaration of Independence that all men, which literally meant men at that time, but we can certainly expand that to mean all people, are created equal, and endowed by their maker. We can modify that too. Just are due the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which was modified to life, liberty, and property in the actual Constitution. Because if it's pursuit of happiness, well, then you can argue that, man, me not having health care really hinders my pursuit of happiness. You could say it hinders your pursuit of property, but you don't. It's not even a pursuit of property. It's just life, liberty, and property. So, like, if you already have property, then you get the right to have property. But if you don't, you're kind of SOL, at least that constitutionally speaking. But yeah, that line that just keeps coming through, because that is actually a good and just line, with the modifications to modernize it a little more. Really mean all people. Don't have to make an appeal to God. We can just say this is what we believe, and that's good enough in my estimation. Once again, every philosophy is based on some desired outcome, and desire is an emotion. So it's okay that we have at our base an axiom that people are more or less equal. Because what exactly does that mean? Do we just mean that they have equal chances in the world to be whatever they want? That they should have equal material comfort? What does equal mean? They have equal potential. That could mean a lot of things. So defining what that means to ourselves, and then sticking by it, recognizing that it is at the heart an axiom, and that's okay. Yeah, we can have that as our credo, because it resonates. We can see this ringing throughout the ages in the history of the United States. This idea that people are created equal, and they're entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But and like I've said before, the reason that it's just not woven into the actual law in that fashion is because once you do so, people start thinking they can demand things like a place to live, regardless of their ability to pay, an education, food. How can you have life if you're deprived of any of these things? Of any of these things, really. Transportation. You have to be able to get around, move around. How else can you pursue any of this stuff? How can you pursue these happinesses? Whatever that means to you. This concept resonates. And over the course of many struggles and many bloody conflicts, including this civil war that we're talking about, though that concept that everyone is created equal has expanded and expanded and expanded. It's what helped it's what helped free the slaves. It's what helped, and it's what helped with voter suffrage of various types. It's what helped with Civil Rights Act. This is what has given us rights. It's just by coming back to this credo again and again. It's like the one good thing, I guess, I could say about America is that it had one good idea. It just didn't know it yet, and it didn't conceive of it. It didn't run the thought experiment to its its logical conclusion, because it started with some assumptions like, well, certainly these people are not included in all people. Certainly women are not included in all men, but right? And yet it is marched on through time and expanded to mean men and women, to mean white and non-white, to mean the able-bodied and the not as able-bodied. It has continued to expand, and every time there's been a great struggle to do so. Yeah, that's like really the one great concept that America has produced. I'm not quite sure who wrote that part of the Declaration, but yeah, at least they hit the nail on the head that one time. The human race. There you go. And Allie, in my view, you should not be deprived of transportation everywhere. That should be your right as a citizen of the earth, to have mobility. That's a basic necessity. How are you ever expected to live the life you want if you can't even move around as you want? There should be all the just built into the building code. You should be able to move about any building as easily as anyone else. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's a good concept to keep coming back to. All people created equal and entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You look at it long enough, and yeah, it was definitely useful. And the internet can be considered part of that transportation as well. It's not a physical transportation, but you definitely can see things and learn things around the world that you otherwise would only be able to see and experience if you physically went there. So that can help, but it's not entirely the same. Yeah. Yeah. I think disability rights are important human rights. Important part of what our intersectional outlook should be on pushing for things like socialism. But anyway, let's get back into the book. We haven't made a whole lot of progress. I've had to been a lot of tangents, and I've had to stop every few sentences because this is important stuff. So I apologize that we're not going through the book itself we're not getting too far into the book itself this go around. But I have put into the show notes the link to this chapter, so if you want to go back and listen to it on your own time, have at it.
2 months later in Charleston, in southern Illinois, Lincoln told his audience, quote, "I will say, then, that I am not, nor have ever been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races." Applause. "That I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior, and as much as any other man, I am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race."
There you go. Great emancipator, everybody. Just naked white supremacy. Why? What is the bottom of this philosophy? What makes you think that one race is inherently better than another? Eventually it's just because that's what I want, because it benefits me. That is ends up being the justification for this sort of position. But yep, Zinn, as always, is not being kind with people just because they're towering historical figures. But yeah, maybe think about these words if you ever happen to visit the Lincoln Memorial or Mount Rushmore, or I believe they have a museum set up to his childhood home in Illinois. Think about that. He did, and that's a good point too. He would go on to moderate his beliefs over the course of his life and the course of his political career, even. I guess dying in office, those are kind of one and the same. But Spelling Lincoln did change. That's true. So just because he's saying this on the campaign stump, but still, someone who's willing to say that, even if they do change, you know, kind of leaves a stain on their legacy, I would say.
Behind the secession of the South from the Union, after Lincoln was elected president in the fall of 1860 as a candidate of the new Republican Party, was a long series of policy clashes between the South and the North. The clash was not over slavery as a moral institution. Most Northerners did not care enough about slavery to make sacrifices for it, certainly not the sacrifice of war.
Yes, good point. Yeah, definitely didn't deserve to be assassinated. I think we can probably come to that conclusion. Yeah, probably did not do anything good for the country as a whole. I think that's fair.
It was not a clash of peoples. Most Northern whites were not economically favored, not politically powerful. Most Southern whites were poor farmers, not decision makers. But
This is the thing. Man, I you know, it's a lot of stuff coming up through this chapter. So again, I apologize for pausing so much, but you know, it is what it is. This is how the stream's just gonna go. As I said, most Southern whites were not decision makers. They didn't have land. They didn't have slaves. And yet, that is somehow used as a justification for a not small group of current day Southerners to support things like the Confederate flag or look favorably upon the Confederates' role in the Civil War. Like, oh, my great granddaddy, he fought on the side of the Confederacy. He didn't own any slaves, so why are y'all mad at him? Why can't I fly this flag? Blah blah blah. It's like he fought for an institution that did not give a shit about him, that ground him down into the earth, almost literally, and probably sacrificed his body and his life to that cause. That's not something to celebrate. That's not something to memorialize and immortalize. Like, just imagine someone, you know, maims you horribly, does something terrible to you. We don't have to be graphic about it. But then you're dependent on them for your livelihood. Say it's someone you live with. Is that then heroic to go out and fight to defend them if someone threatens them? I don't think so. I'd say it's pretty misguided. And that sort of valorization of those efforts should just be let go of. They were not fighting any sort of a noble cause. Not that everyone in the North was fighting for any noble cause necessarily, but the end result was still the end of chattel slavery in the United States. So that's why it doesn't make any sense to keep propping up these old symbols of even more brutal regimes. I mean, think of the regime in the world today that you hate the most, or whatever it might be. Myanmar, maybe you hate Syria or Russia or North Korea. Doesn't really matter. Just pick someone that whose regime, or pick a country whose regime you absolutely despise. Okay? I mean, Russia would be a good one for this example. Now imagine going back 100 years from now, and because your great grandfather fought for the Russians against their will, probably, for the cause of expanding the territory of a capitalist, imperialist state. Imagine defending that action as though it was somehow noble or worth remembering and valorizing. This wouldn't make any sense, would it? That's how valorizing Civil War fighters, even if you do have a bloodline to them, is they were not fighting the good fight. They were not fighting off northern aggression or any of the other myriad ways that the daughters of the what was it, daughters of the Confederacy, whatever that booster group was in the South, tried to spin things. That's all BS. Those people didn't have power because of the power structures, but they still fought to maintain those power structures. That's not a noble act. I'm sorry. It's just not. And you shouldn't view it that way. I'm sure, look, I have ancestry on my grandmother's side, on my dad's mother's side, that goes back before the American Revolution. I'm sure I could, you know what? I haven't taken my DNA test, but when I do, I'm going to see if I can find some of my relatives from way back. I wouldn't be surprised if I had slave owning ancestors or ancestors that participated in genocide or land grabs or any number of terrible things because my line just goes back that far on this continent as a white person. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not plenty of intermarrying between whites and other races, as though that were a thing to even worry about for anybody. But regardless, the point being, there's probably things that are in my generational line that I wouldn't be proud of. And just because they happen to be my generational line, I'm not going to hold them up as some kind of martyr for a noble truth if they weren't that. I know my, let's see, great aunt Hortense was an avid anti-woman suffragette. Okay, she wrote all sorts of letters that were later found, talking about how the one, that she'd say things like, the one thing that the suffragettes can't understand is that if women get the vote, then they're just going to cancel out their husband's vote. And then what do you do then? There'll be election chaos and on with this garbage logic and so forth. Should I hold that up as somehow noble because it happens to be someone that was related to me? No. It doesn't make any sense. So, it's okay to put down Confederate soldiers, is the point. It's okay to not hold monuments to them and name high schools after them and, constantly say, oh, the South will rise again. The South shouldn't rise. Not for the defense of what it was defending then. Now, maybe if the next time the South rises, it's in favor of socialism for all. Well, sure, yeah. Let's have the South rise this time for a good reason. I mean, if anyone stands to gain from a socialist system, it is the most impoverished people in the United States, the people with the absolute least power. So sure, South has plenty of reason to rise on those grounds, but that's not what they mean, is it? Makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to still prop up these people and what they did. So you're saying, Allie, does people's mindset change in 100 years? And will humans change and still exist in 200 years? The thing of it is, the more that I read this book, the more I realize that in many ways, no. The breadth of human thought and feeling and philosophy doesn't much change over the ages. What can change is who gets to make the decisions about which mindset or mentality is in vogue, either through the wielding of soft power or through the enactment of laws. But, I mean, the fact that in this day and age there's still people trying to fight gay marriage, there's still people who want a literal monarchy, whether or not they think they'll actually fare better in it, they just want that sort of security and comfort of it. There's significant amounts of these people that you can't just dismiss it as completely fringe or just one crazy contrarian who believes it. There's enough people that would love a theocracy in the United States that it's a little bit scary. But luckily, most of those people are not currently in a position to do anything about it. At least not on a broad scale. Maybe in their local town they can, we've been watching this show about people that escape mostly Mormon cults, polygamy cults in the Southwest. And there's entire towns that they've basically taken over in places where they, all the police, how many members of this, what they call the SLDS church or whatever. So they will enforce the laws of their religious teachings as much as they possibly can without getting disbanded by some higher order of government. But yeah, the soft power is certainly in place to enforce a certain way of thinking and doing. So my point in all this is that scope of belief and philosophy never really goes away. You're never, there's, debate bros will love to think that if they just say the right thing in the right combination of words or really epically own their opponent enough, just grind their arguments into dust, that they will just vanish from the earth and no one will ever believe in this philosophy again. They will all just abandon it. But the truth is that people are more complex than that. People, at their core, believe what they want to believe. For better or for worse, I want to believe that we can live in a socialist system where, at the very least, people have direct democratic control over the things that are most responsible for their daily survival, that being their job. I believe we can live in a system where basic human needs are met because we already have enough of everything to meet everyone's human needs many times over. It's a question of political will, number one, and then also of things like distribution and stuff like that, which can be solved. We can solve these problems if we so chose to. I believe we can live in a system where everyone has their basic needs met. Yeah. And at some point it gets down to, because I want to believe that that's possible. But that's the same for everybody. Most people want to believe that, or most people want to believe, or a lot of people want to believe that the current system is the highest and best system. I don't know if it's the majority opinion or not. Probably kind of vaguely the majority opinion. People that haven't thought about it much, just to kind of assume that this is what we got. This must be the best we can do. There's a lot of capitalist realism out there. Let's not shy away from it in any way. But then again, like I say, there's people that really believe in slavery, really believe in race realism, really believe in all kinds of horrible stuff. That stuff never completely goes away. No matter how many times you slam down their arguments, no matter how many times their people are, their leaders are denounced or imprisoned, or their movement falls apart, like it ebbs and it flows. So, in a certain way, no, humans' mindsets never change, but majority opinion can change. The prevailing opinion and the opinion of those in power can change. The dynamics of power can change. Sock dem or dem sock coin. Well, I mean, I believe in anarcho-communism. So I would like to go even much further than even democratic socialism. But I think democratic socialism is a worthy next step. I think that that's something that at least even the most jaded capitalist realists can believe is possible. That we can get to a point where, say, worker-owned cooperatives are the norm rather than the exception, the rule rather than the exception, I should say, where we can, in effect, do away with, whether it's explicitly by legal means, by saying we're just going to outlaw the private property form so that no one can own and monopolize the means of production, or whether it's just by kind of a de facto, this is no longer a system that holds social currency, and kind of the Richard Wolff approach, where there's just enough worker-owned cooperatives that the power of capitalism fades away eventually. I think there's enough people that believe in that, though, that definitely is a possible future within my lifetime. But I would like to go so much farther, to the point where people have relatively the same amount of physical and political power wherever they are, whatever system they're born into. I would like to do away with as many unjust hierarchies as possible, and give people the greatest opportunity for their personal flourishing as possible. I would love to live in a world where people could just sit back and decide what it is that they want to contribute to the world, maybe day by day. Maybe some days you want to go out and be a sewer worker because you understand the value of that utility, and you want to be one of the people that helps uphold it. Maybe some days you want to go out and just be an artist, just make art, whether or not you give it away, or ideally not even have to sell it, because to live in actual anarchy or actual communism is to live in a classless, stateless, moneyless society. I believe in a system where people just give each other what they need. I believe that is possible and worth fighting for. But in the meantime, as much control as capitalism exerts over the world and over people's minds, I think a realistic goal certainly is democratic socialism, doing away with the capitalist form and replacing it with a socialist one. Socialism being the workers owning the means of production. It doesn't have to be through the channel of the government. It can also be directly through like a worker-owned cooperative or other such configuration. There's different ways to conceive of it, but I think just that bare bones socialism is something that's possible. So, that's where I'm at. I dream of the day when, hopefully the U.S. Green Party continues to push its way towards socialism, where socialism is the overwhelming force within the Green Party. It seems like it kind of is at that point now, considering they nominated unavowed socialist Howie Hawkins last time for their nomination. But I would love to see a day where they are the oppositional party to the Democrats, and the Republicans have just withered away. They've played their last trick, their last way to guarantee their seat in power. They've gerrymandered their last district. There's just not enough people left to support their causes and ideas, because the jig is up and we've all realized that they don't actually have any ideas or causes. They just want things to go back. They just want the order the way things used to be in their imagined past. So what is really even the point of following them, unless you happen to be one of those people that benefits from concentrations of power? But yeah, I would love to see the day where the Democrats are rightly seen as the right-wing party in the United States, and someone like the Greens or Party for Socialism and Liberation, or maybe Black Panther Party, how about that, are the oppositional parties. Love to see a day where we have more than two parties in this country. But the idea of the Republicans withering away seems more realistic. It doesn't seem like Gen Z is buying into this capitalist realism the way that even millennials have. I would say that a big reason that millennials are one of the most nostalgic generations is because we've run up against so much capitalist realism. We've realized that this system is really hard to defeat, and a lot of us have just accepted that it's not even worth trying for even the old markers of power, like being able to put your bills on auto pay and having a house and a working car. That just seems to be out of reach for so many of us, that I think we've just kind of accepted that this is the system and it's how it's going to be, but not as much so with Gen Z. So it gives me hope. And, the powers that be are not giving up their neoliberal gravy train. They really love their entrenched power at this point, Democrats included, especially the establishment ones. So good news is, hey, yay, accelerationism. Seems like we're going to be pushed towards change one way or another. Anyway, digressing a little bit more. Yeah, good point, Allie. Nazis still exist. They're still Nazis. They lost an entire world war, and somehow their ideology still holds currency with enough people that you probably know someone, maybe from high school or a friend of a friend, who identifies with something that could be called a neo-Nazi party. Maybe they're a Proud Boy. Maybe they're an Oath Keeper. Maybe they are more explicit in their Nazism, but it touches, it's not that far removed from anyone's life. And they lost an entire war. I mean, that should have been the end of the Nazi ideology. Why would you want to hitch yourself to the wagon of history's biggest losers? I don't know, but you do. So that shows that, yeah, that idea is just never going to go. There's always going to be someone who's so disenfranchised and bitter and angry that they want these simple answers that the Nazis provide. It's them. It's all their fault. That's going to hold currency for some subset of very scared, very angry people. But yes, hopefully they're never in power again. Hopefully they never are the ones at the head, at the helm of what makes cultural currency, let alone wields political power. I agree. Anyway, let's continue on with the book a little bit more. We got 15 minutes left tonight, so I'd like to get, I don't even think we're not even quite at the halfway point. Let's make our goal at least the halfway point for tonight. So I'm going to let it run a little bit, maybe for like a 5-minute block or something, before I comment again, or at least I'm going to do my best to try and succeed at that.
Of elites. The northern elite wanted economic expansion, free land, free labor, a free market, a high protective tariff for manufacturers, a Bank of the United States. The slave interests opposed all that. They saw Lincoln and the Republicans as making continuation of their pleasant and prosperous way of life impossible in the future. So, when Lincoln was elected, 7 southern states seceded from the Union. Lincoln initiated hostilities by trying to repossess the federal base at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, and 4 more states seceded. The Confederacy was formed. The Civil War was on. Lincoln's first inaugural address in March 1861 was conciliatory toward the South and the seceded states. Quote, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists.
Yep.
I believe I have no lawful right to do so, and I have no inclination to do so." And with the war 4 months on, when General John C. Fremont in Missouri declared martial law and said slaves of owners resisting the United States were to be free, Lincoln countermanded this order. He was anxious to hold in the Union the slave states of Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, and Delaware. It was only as the war grew more bitter, the casualties mounted, desperation to win heightened, and the criticism of the abolitionists threatened to unravel the tattered coalition behind Lincoln, that he began to act against slavery. Hofstadter puts it this way, quote, "Like a delicate barometer, he recorded the trend of pressures, and as the radical pressure increased, he moved toward the left," unquote. Wendell Phillips said that if Lincoln was able to grow, quote, "it is because we have watered him," unquote. Racism in the North was as entrenched as slavery in the South, and it would take the war to shake both. New York blacks could not vote unless they owned $250 in property, a qualification not applied to whites. A proposal to abolish this, put on the ballot in 1860, was defeated 2-1, although Lincoln carried New York by 50,000 votes. Frederick Douglass commented, quote, "The black baby of Negro suffrage was thought too ugly to exhibit on so grand an occasion. The Negro was stowed away, like some people put out of sight their deformed children when company comes."
Oh,
Wendell Phillips, with all
just so much in that. Oh, I didn't quite make it 5 minutes today. Some people put away their deformed children when company comes because they're. Could you imagine being so ashamed of your own offspring that you would hide them away when company comes? What a cruel time. I guess that's all I have to say about that right now because like it seems pretty obvious. I couldn't let that go without comment. That's horrid.
his criticism of Lincoln, recognized the possibilities in his election. Speaking at the Tremont Temple in Boston the day after the election, Phillips said, quote, "If the Telegraph speaks the truth, for the first time in our history, the slave has chosen a president of the United States. Not an abolitionist, hardly an anti-slavery man, Mr. Lincoln consents to represent anti-slavery ideas. A pawn on the political chessboard, his value is in his position. With fair effort, we may soon change him for knight, bishop, or queen and sweep the board." Applause.
Interesting. Not quite sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pausing too much to pick up all the context. It's hard to tell if that was a pro-Lincoln or an anti-Lincoln quote. But anyway, I guess if he's sweeping the board, sure. I guess that means, put enough power behind him and he can really make some change. I guess that's how I would take it. Ali says, "I want many political parties to choose from, but I do not want to vote for the current GOP. It's facepalm." Yeah, and as I've been trying to, again, so much of these dang right libertarians lately, but as I've been trying to get through their heads, if you don't have a meaningful alternative, then how can you have a choice? If you have the one thing that's not very palatable, and then the other thing that would like kill you or people you love, or severely endanger you, there's no way you would ever choose it. Do you have a choice then? Seems like you don't. Your only choice would be to like not vote, but then that just is allowing other people to make that choice where the choice is going to be made, whether it's by you or other people. The exercise will continue in transfers of political power. Well, James, how are you, my friend? That's okay. I've been rambling quite a bit this stream. Allie can attest to that. But anyway, I agree, Allie. Yeah, GOP is not a meaningful alternative. So do we really have political choice if like we have, what would I compare the Democrats to? Something that's very flashy and marketed well. Let's say our choice is between the Big Mac or a plate of dog shit. Is that really a choice? Like the Big Mac, oh, it looks real great. You see how big the meat looks on the packaging or the advertisements for it on the board there. It's like, oh man, that looks like the greatest burger in history. And you get it, and it's like I don't even know what the ounce patties would register as. Very tiny patties, a lot of bread filler, some really, I guess the lettuce is just there to add texture, some vague special sauce, which you can buy better special sauce in any grocery store. And that's it. It's like, and like plastic cheese. Yeah, it's a 1/16 patty, not even close to a quarter pounder. So it's really disappointing when you finally get down to it. But hey, you literally do survive by choosing it, and then your other choice is dog shit, like a McShit burger. If those are the only two things on the menu, is that a choice? I submit, no, it is not a choice. So when it comes to workers, sure, they have a choice of which master to hitch their fortunes to, and some might be kinder or better than others, or treat them better, or compensate them better. But you got to pick one of them because startup capital is just out of the question for most people. Most people don't have good enough credit score and never will because they will always be just a little bit behind on bills or have a little bit too much debt or this, that, or the other thing. They're not they're not going to get that loan to, open that I don't know, whatever their dream job is to work for themselves. And even if they did, then they're just turning around and, oh, thank you so much for the 10 bits, Elliot. I really do appreciate that. Even if they did get startup capital, are they just going to turn around and become the very tyrant that they're trying to get away from and just have other people hitch their fortunes to them? And you can say, oh, well, you could just form a cooperative and stuff like that, but getting startup capital for that is even more hard because banks are uneasy about lending to something that's not as tried and true in their mind as a traditionally organized capitalist endeavor, despite the fact that worker-owned cooperatives have a much better success rate than conventionally organized ones. Probably not least of which because people have a lot more buy-in when they have a lot more say. They actually care about the business's success. They enthusiastically tell their friends about it. But anyway, if there's not really a meaningful alternative, because most people are never gonna. I mean, I would love. My dream is to start a cooperative kombucha cafe. I've gotten into brewing kombucha. I think its time has come in the beverage market. You're starting to see more local breweries even come up with their own versions of kombucha. I've seen it on tap in places. I think its time has come to have an actual cafe surrounding kombucha because it's a great, refreshing, sparkling drink. It comes in a quite wide variety of flavors. It could be the next sort of craft beer, especially for those who don't want hard alcoholic beverages for whatever reason. So my dream would be to open up a worker-owned cooperative that we would brew our own, and we would also feature on tap as many other local producers as possible. We would have an aquaponics array where we would grow as much of our own food as possible. These sorts of things. This would be my dream. Am I likely to ever get the business loan to do that? No, no, no. I have a lot of student debt, and that would all count against me. I don't own any real estate. My only asset really is my car, and it's still worth maybe $10,000, but is that enough to start a cafe? Probably not. Maybe I could do a food truck. And that's about as much as I could hope for. And that food truck, man, that's really rolling the dice. Because I've seen them operate. They have some tight windows of business operations. Basically, you need to be in downtown Minneapolis, St. Paul during the lunch rush. You have maybe an hour and a half where people are just flooding your truck, trying to get as much of it as possible before they have to go back to work. And then what? Like, what do you do in the morning? I've seen a few that offer coffee to maybe marginal success. What do you do in the afternoon? Some of them hook up with breweries and stuff like that and go on a tour of breweries and stuff. That might be successful, but it's a tough game. So the chances of this happening without, say, becoming a breakout Twitch star and being able to raise tons of money just through sheer reach of viewership, the chances of me actually ever doing this are pretty small. They're pretty small. So that leaves me with the option of working for other people. So then my options are, again, that Big Mac. I can work for someone else and yeah, I might do okay. Maybe even upgrade that Big Mac to a quarter pounder with cheese or something like that. Or, really actually get something of substance and get maybe even get a healthy alternative. Maybe I can switch over to that BK Impossible Burger, which, I mean, still loaded with salt and other stuff, but marginally more healthy than your average hamburger, perhaps. maybe I can even, get something a little bit better than that. But I'm never going to be the one selling the burgers. So my choices are to eat that, or then there's that shit burger again. And that is the idea of just saying, screw it all, and, becoming a homeless person. It's the work or starve edict that runs throughout capitalism. Man, I did not even get close to making it to the halfway mark. But this is important to me, so I like talking about it anyway. So, do I really have a meaningful alternative to working for a capitalist? No, I don't. So, even though not a single capitalist has ever said to my face, work for me or starve, the collective oligopoly has said, not explicitly, but the implicit threat is, work for one of us or you will starve. You'll be met with privation. You will die on the streets. Is that a meaningful choice then that I'm making to be, just because I can interchange for maybe a better or worse master? I say no. I say that is a system of coercion. What would be a real alternative? Well, it might start with having my basic needs met, regardless of if I even have a job. Guaranteed health care, guaranteed housing. Other countries do it. They actually have very nice, what we call government housing, but they just call public housing. Very nice housing with gyms and like the amenities you see in modern apartment complexes. And then it's nice places. People are guaranteed a place to live. Amazing. We can do it. Actually, guaranteed food, guaranteed, clean drinking water, guaranteed utilities, guaranteed access to whatever education I want so that I can actually pursue that happiness. Guaranteed transportation to take me wherever I go on mass transit. Sure, I think that's a fair way to do it. You don't have to give a car to everybody. That would actually make things a lot worse because cars are great for the country. They're okay for the suburbs, and they're terrible for cities. And I want to live in a city. I like living in a city. I like being where there's lots of stuff going on, things to try, things to do, people to see, interesting stuff happening. So anyway, if I had all of that stuff met for me, well, I mean, then at least I could have a choice of whether to work for any of those fuckers. Sorry for the language, but yeah, any of those greedy capitalists, greedy business owners who just want me for my labor so they can line their own pockets with the money that I produce through my own labor. Or I could work for none of them. At least that's the beginning of a choice. That's the beginning of a choice. And having all those basic needs met means I wouldn't have had to go into debt much in the first place. Like, college debt, gone. Debt that I've had to go into for things like, oh, my car breaks down. I need a new part, or I need new tires, or, medical bills come up. Medical's paid for. I would be in a place where at least I would have stability. And stability means real choice. Because whatever I do, whether I choose to work for that business owner now or not, I'll be okay. That's a meaningful alternative. That is an equivalent alternative, in fact, to working for someone else. So there's the beginning. But we could go even further. What if whatever business I then chose to work for, I had a voting share in? And instead of the way that we do it now with the more shares you have, the more votes you have, which is not exactly democratic. What if we did it in a more democratic way where one worker equals one vote and only workers can have voting shares? You might sell other shares and then people can, buy your stock, and as they do now, just like you buy McDonald's stock right now, you're never going to have a say in the way McDonald's runs its business. Not even with your, you can buy 100 shares of McDonald's stock. You're never going to get over 50%. You will never be the controlling interest in McDonald's. So why even do it? It's because you're making a bet. You're making a bet on the future productivity of McDonald's, right? So it'd be no different than that. But only the workers could have voting shares. And then we would vote on the important things. What sort of production we want to do. What sources we're willing to get our materials from. What the working conditions are going to be. We would iron this stuff out democratically. What the pay rates. Who is going to be in management. We could elect our own bosses democratically. There would be no CEO at the top. That's really the only difference. Or that's the major difference, let's say. So instead of an autocrat just sitting at the top in his often literal tower, looking down upon all his employees, we would all be in the control position. And again, that's not to say that there wouldn't be space for like management. It's an efficient way to run a business to have someone that makes decisions and people to carry out those decisions. That's okay. That's a justified, very small, relatively speaking, hierarchy, especially if you can vote them out at any time. So we make decisions like that. Then I really have choice, because then I could choose. Yeah, I'm finishing up. Man is getting mad that I'm not done at 9. I just want to finish this thought and I'll be done. To me, that's real choice. That is a choice that capitalism can never offer. And that to me is why capitalism never really is a choice for the worker. It may be for a few select lucky people who are able to amass capital and then become the owner themselves. But in general, it did you wait. Mention pepperoni rolls somehow. Mick pepperoni rolls. That's funny.
10,000 points.
Yeah. So anyway, so maybe you could argue that for a very lucky few, there actually is a real choice, and the choice is to become the tyrant that you are now despising. Great choice in that, so you can become the burger slinger rather than or become the burger owner rather than the burger maker or the burger consumer. But other than that, most people just don't have choice. You got to pick your poison. Pick who you work for, where you are not really in control of the business contract. They hold the balance of power by a wide margin. And ask for too much money, they can just say no. Ask for too much time off or different hours than they want, they can just say no. They can just fire you. They don't like you. If they don't like the things you're demanding. So what choice is that really? Not really a choice. I think that's the point I'm trying to get to. All right, let's get to some comments and then we're out of here. James says, I like the double cheeseburgers in the 90s, but they did something in such a mess. You're trying to say a McMess nowadays? Go Burger King. Yeah. Yeah. But they couldn't even do McPepperoni rolls, right? Oh, yeah. No, you shouldn't want your beloved pepperoni rolls corrupted by the McGarbage. Oh, that'd be horrible. Macaroni rolls would make it. Amanda James doesn't know if macaroni rolls would make it. What do you think?
I think it depends on the time of year and the most current demographic. If it's mostly kids, I think it would, as long as you offered a plethora of sauces for dipping.
Yeah. So Amanda says maybe if you had enough sauces and you offered it the right time of year, it could catch on. Would it be a true, authentic West Virginia experience? God, no. Absolutely not. Mixed spaghetti. Oh. Perish the thought, Allie. That's where I draw the line. I don't think anyone can do fast food spaghetti justice. That's just not going to be a thing.
It just comes in a cup and you slop it down.
Oh, gross. Anyway. Burger King Roni rolls with zesty sauce. Okay.
Or you could suck it down with a straw.
Oh, yeah. We'll just have all our lunch in a cup. We'll just push ourselves to the world of Wall-E. It's lunch in a cup.
Hey, soup comes in a
Soup is pretty good. I'll give it that. Shakes and smoothies are pretty good too. But I don't want all my meals coming in a cup. I draw the line. I gotta draw the line somewhere. Anyway, hopefully we can imagine a world where we actually have real choice. And again, that's not a world that capitalism can provide. Only can really be provided by, at the very least, a socialist order. Sodium-filled foods, yeah, pretty gross. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Thank you especially to Alyosha and James for being such entertaining and engaging audience members. We will raid into somebody. If you have zesty sauce is a meal if you dip stuff in it. Oh. I don't know what the zesty sauce is, but I'm not liking the sound of it.
Maybe it's made out of zesties, which are actually delicious.
Something tells me that zesty sauce is not made out of radish sprouts. Believe it or not.
You don't know.
I'm taking a wild guess here. Back me up if I'm right, guys. All right, let's see who's on and available to raid into. Probably going to be one of our friends
Me.
from CI Posting. People that I've met through the Coconut Island Facebook group. Epic Prawn is on. There's a choice. Actual Jake is on. Yeah, I don't know. Cosmopolitics. This is someone that I must have followed recently because I don't recognize them. Cosmopolitics. Monday, can't trust that day. Let's see. Let's read about Cosmopolitics. My name is Cosme, she, her. Variety streamer, talk politics and pop culture. Do a ton of Sims 4 gaming. So doing a little bit of that here. Cool. Sounds fun. Only 9 people watching now, so they would actually benefit from our raid. Let's go with Cosmopolitics. Looks like a lot of fun. But I don't think I've watched this stream before, so I can't 100% guarantee it. But let's all take a chance together, huh? Let's branch out and find someone new. Yes, take a chance on me. Take a chance on Cosmopolitics there. In case you're finding this from some other platform, there's a link to Cosmopolitics on Twitch. And we will start the raid just as soon as we are able. Thank you all. Second favorite Scandinavians? I don't know what Amanda's riffing about over there. But sounds like a cool thing that she is looking at. So we're gonna raid into that stream. Tell them where you came from. Show them the same respect and good time that. Show them a good time. Oh, don't do that. Just be nice, okay? Check out someone new. Here's Cosmopolitics.